Alright, so this is going to be a quick video on ways you can make navigating Maya a lot easier. So if you notice at the top, I have this kind of bookmark shelf menu, and I don't know if you guys use it, but it's actually very helpful. And I'm going to be showing you guys basically how to create this, set it up the way that you want, very simply, as well as having kind of your own personal workspaces. It's very simple, and it should be a very quick video. I think the easiest way to go about doing this is by going and making a new tab or a new shelf. So you would go over here and you'd create a new shelf, and I would give the name Demo Custom. Oh, yeah, and make sure that there's no space in the name. So Demo Custom, when you start off, you see that there's nothing in the shelf. And so very simply, all I would do is you hold Control and Shift, and you select any of the menu items, and you can pretty much add whatever you need to into the menu so that you can kind of have them for easier access. So, for example, what I usually start off with is I usually Control Shift, and I have the first couple of items just being able to create things like a cube and a sphere and a cylinder and things like that. And I usually go from left to right. So next up, the things that I use the most is creating point lights and directional lights. And then I do like to create cameras. And then we can move on to here, stuff like freeze transformations, center pivot. I think that's it for there. Like we can have the graph editor, for example. See if I can find that. Graph editor should be right here. The shape editor, which is where I control blend shapes and stuff like that. And pretty much you'll have them over here for easy access. And if you ever want to, you can pretty much just, instead of having to navigate the menus, you can have these things be right up at the top. And you can also create your own custom shelves that have specific purposes. Like, for example, if I wanted a shelf and I wanted that to be my FX shelf or my N cloth shelf, right? I can create that, and I can just go to FX and have all of the important stuff like creating end cloth, passive colliders, transform constraints, things like that. And I can have all of that centered right here, so I can kind of just navigate these shelves whichever way I want. But for now, I think that I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete this shelf, and I'm going to delete the end cloth shelf. And you can see that if you go to my shelf right here, my shelf is here called custom, and I have basically all of the stuff that I use mainly over here, and it's become kind of like a muscle memory. I kind of just click over here whenever I need something. If I want to open up the graph editor, I can just click here and it's immediately open. If I want to open up the spreadsheet, I can do that as well. I don't have to sit here and try to peer through which submenu it's in. It's just like right there. Another way to make things a little bit easier as well is by having default workspaces. So if you see right now, I'm on the standard modeling workspace, and if you go to different workspaces, you get different kind of menu sets. And this is all stuff you can change, but these are kind of just like pre-built menus, or the way the menus are set up. So I have my own set of kind of submenus or personal kind of workspaces. As you can see right here, I have Arnold view and I have side-by-side view. So if I click on Arnold view, you can see that I'm pretty much going to be able to get the scene. I can create a light, directional light right here, and I can render right here on the screen. I can also do this, go to side-by-side view, and if you do that, X this out, you can see that I have two menus open up, so I can have one for the perspective view, and if I ever wanted, I could have this one for like the front view or something like that, but I can have both of them kind of right here at the same time. And there's many ways to kind of get this to be set up. For example, you can get this side-by-side view simply by right-clicking over here and selecting side-by-side, or two pane stacked, or stuff like that. But I find it easier to kind of just make my own workspace because I can kind of just easily have access to every single kind of menu set that I would like. And so the way you go about doing this is use very simply. You go into whatever view that you would like. So for example, I'm going to go into the single pane view as you see right here. I'm going to go to perspective, and let's say I wanted to make a kind of workspace that is centered around animation, you know, and I don't have two monitors or something. It's a lot, I need to keep this all in one monitor, so in order to do that, I need to kind of like make the workspace look nice and, you know, not have menus kind of floating around everywhere. So the way I would go about doing that is, for example, I would open up the graph editor because I know that that's one of the most important things. for animation, and I would simply drag the top of the menu to pretty much, as you can see, these gray kind of thin gray lines around the menu. You can kind of move them around, and I would move it to maybe, for example, I would move it below, or actually maybe I would move it to the side. So maybe I would move it in between kind of these two menus. So if you see when I move it on that gray line, you see a blue bar it shows up. So I'm gonna let go, and you can see that the editor is now kind of stuck in between these three things. And there's still like it still looks very smushed and kind of unattractive right now. So what I might do is I'm gonna get rid of the attribute editor, or at least try to make it a little bit skinnier. I'm gonna get rid of the outliner. I don't really need that right now. And I'm going to bring this menu, which is my viewport, I'm going to bring that up so that it has the most space in the scene. Now the graph editor, it looks nice, but I think the graph editor looks better when it's kind of like a little bit more, I guess, not so tall. So I think I'm going to put something here to kind of mitigate the space below the graph editor to kind of like, have it share this column with something else. So what is another thing that I feel like as an animator I'd be using frequently during my animation? Let's see. Let's look at my bar over here and see what I have. So when it comes to animation, one thing that I know that I would probably be frequently using would, for example, maybe be, let's go into the animation editor. We have stuff like the shape editor. We can use that. We could have all these other things like the time editor, but I don't really use the time editor. Tracks editor, I don't really use that. And none of these things I think correspond to animation all that much. So I might just put something like the blend shape editor or something there to make things a little bit easier for myself. So let's open up the blend shape editor. You have it right here. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to drag it below this time. I'm going to drag it to this column right here. So as you can see, it is now sharing that column with the graph editor, and I'm liking the way this looks. As you can see, the attribute, this little column over here takes up a small amount of space. My actual viewport takes up a big chunk, so I can clearly see what's going on, and I can move without it being too obstructed. But then on the top left, I'm going to have the graph editor, so if I save this and then I move this over this way, you can see I can very easily kind of go about accessing the animation for it and kind of changing whatever I need to. And if I so kind of wanted to, or whatever, I could kind of just have the shape editor over here. Or if I want, I can get rid of the shape editor, and instead I can take like something like the render view. As you can see, I already have a render already in there, and I can just take it and I can drag it below right here. And just kind of do the same thing. So now I have the render view down here. So I can basically see, I can render my scene, I can animate, and I can have my actual viewport here all at once. So that makes things easier. And the way that I would save this is I would simply go over to Workspace, and then you go all the way to the bottom and you see Save Current Workspace As, and I would simply call this the animation menu. And simply by doing that, you're going to have that along with all the other kind of personal menus that you have. So those are the main two things that I think make things much easier on your end to kind of remember where things are, is being able to press Control Shift to add something to your kind of workspace over up here, your shelf, and then being able to kind of create your own workspace with all the panes and navigation bars and all of that, the boxes that Maya has. So makes things a lot easier so that when it's time for you to animate, you can kind of just click this and you can get started and do whatever you need to. And if you want to start rendering, you can kind of just have access to this now. So